All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews. I'm your host, AJ Armstrong. You can follow me on Instagram at AaronArmstrong33, or you can always check me out at my website at AaronJArmstrong.com. Now, I've got a really cool guest on today. His name is Mr. Nate Scott. And now Nate Scott is kind of a renaissance man in the fact that he's done so many different things and so widely focused. So it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what I want to talk about, but just a couple highlights, right? So he built a $1 million real estate business in 90 days. He made his first million by the time he was 32 years old. So this stuff is possible, and I want to start asking him some of these questions. But keep in mind, too, he's a principle valued leader. He values biblical-based teachings and ethics in what he does and how he tries to train his people and try to spread good words and good messages and give value. So when you guys talk about giving value to create business, giving value to create an image, this is the man that you want to listen to because he's done this a million different ways, and his bio is so extensive that I'm just going to let him roll into it and kind of tell us a little bit about the story. So, Mr. Nate Scott, thank you for coming on. Please tell us about your story.
Well, Aaron, first and foremost, man, I'm excited to be here with you. Thank you for the opportunity to connect. Always excited to touch young grads, man. And I'll always be able to say that to anyone that's younger than me. So thank you, and I'm excited about the work that you're doing. And
fellow ring knocker here, West Point graduate, Mr. Nate Scott. So we got the connection going.
There you go. Well, very simply, let me begin with I'm from a small town outside of Savannah, Georgia, called Rincon, Georgia, Effingham County. And as I grew up coming through high school, I had a desire to play college basketball. And when my scholarship fell through coming out of high school, I turned down my academic scholarships and enlisted in the Army. Now, I'll tell you that en route to making those decisions, I started thinking about financial independence as a 10th grader in high school. And the reason I started thinking about it, because I realized that I didn't want to have the same type of life that I grew up. Not that I didn't have a good life from a family foundation, but I had the life that I knew that my parents would always have to say, well, I'll think about it. You know, I have to ask for certain things and then they'll tell me, well, I got to think about it. Meaning I got to look at what we have financially to see whether or not we can do that. And my dad was always big on telling me, well, I'm not going to promise you that, because he knew in his mind that no matter what happened, even if he went and got into a car accident and he couldn't follow through with something, he would always say, I didn't want that in your mind, because all you would remember is daddy said that he was going to do it. And so that was always something that drove me. So when my basketball scholarship fell through, I turned down my academic scholarships and enlisted in the Army. And as soon as I got to my unit, I immediately enrolled in college courses, continued to play sports. And as a result of my activity, one of my professors, her husband was a West Pointer. She knew my company commander, and then they approached me about the idea of going to West Point.
Sure.
And I'll tell you from the front side, I had no intentions of going to the academy, but I went because I knew that there was something that I could gain as a result of that experience. I didn't really cement that decision until I saw myself at 19 walking the perimeter during Desert Storm, when I said, Lord, if you allow me to make it back, I'll never waste a day of my life. And when I got back to my unit in Germany, I found out that I got the opportunity to go to the prep school, which was a 10-month program. Still had no intentions of going to West Point, but I knew that at the prep school, it would give me an opportunity to make my transition back into the civilian world and get the opportunity to go ahead and start playing basketball at the JC level, if you will. And so on February 26, 1992, at 10:30 a.m., I literally wrote out a Benjamin Franklin T, and I made a decision. I had my pros and my cons, and I found that the decision to go to West Point was based upon something long-term as opposed to the immediate downturn. And what I mean by downturn is I had to make some sacrifices and give up some niceties by putting myself in a position to go to West Point. But I knew that time that I would go there would have some tremendous long-term value for me. And so that's what made me make the decision. So I went on to the academy, did well, finished up being 3rd Regimental Commander, was excited about being able to show cadets what soldiers were really like, and graduated in 1996. And this is where my entrepreneurial journey began. Because in 1996, the week that I graduated from West Point, I got introduced to the world of personal growth and development and entrepreneurship. That day changed my life. Have you seen the movie Pursuit of Happiness?
Absolutely.
Okay, so in that movie, Pursuit of Happiness, there was a scene where the white guy came up in a red sports car, and Will stopped him, and he said, ooh, I have 2 questions for you. And for you guys out there that are watching or listening, this is where you want to really start taking some notes. The thing is, he asked those two powerful questions. And I've told people around the world over 20 years now that these two questions are $1 million questions. And all you got to do is take these down and go apply them. So you ready? First question is, what do you do? The second question is, how do you do it? What do you do and how do you do it? If you make a habit of asking people that you perceive to be successful, what did they do and how did they do it? That right there will give you a direct link to the answers that you really need, so that you don't waste all this time trying to figure out stuff from people that don't have any idea, that have no experience, that have no knowledge. Go to the source. And that scene right there, when he asked the question, the guy says, well, I'm a stockbroker. In Will's mind, he immediately said, oh, I guess you got to go to college for that. But he did what most people don't do. He didn't keep it in his mind. He actually said it out loud, which then what did that do? That gave the guy that had the information the opportunity to tell him, no, you just got to be good with people and good with numbers. So as I share with you guys today, I want to continue to reiterate certain points so that I can break down the different myths and all the different lies that keep us playing small. And so from that scene, absolutely, I tell you that particular thing, and then that in turn led into everything else. And so as I said, pivotal point for me, I got introduced to personal growth and development, entrepreneurship. And as I speak around the world, I tell people, take away my West Point degree, which is engineering and sociology, take away my MBA from George Washington University, take away my financial planning from Georgetown University. When I learned to pick up books and go to seminars and be around successful people, that's what laid the foundation for me to make my first $1 million by 32. And that simply happened because as I transitioned from the military, there were 90 days called terminal leave. I knew before that I'd already purchased a property that I needed to have a history of income back at that time. In the time when I was getting loans, they said you have to have a history of income. And that was simply looking at, well, what's your career track? How long have you been in that job? How much money have you made? So they can see the steadiness of your income so you can get funding and financing for whatever you're doing. Well, transitioning from the military, I was going to be in between jobs. I was going to be military for this period of time, but then I was going to have a brand new job. So I wouldn't have a history of income in my new job. So that caused me to say, well, if I'm going to do something, I got to take massive action. I had just read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And literally 90 days after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I took massive action. The first property I came across was a townhouse, put a contract on that, continued to look through the paper, came across another property, saw the same phone number, realized, this must be the same seller. It was. I called it, was able to put together a package deal with that. Continued to look during the same period of time and came across an apartment complex, 40 units. Didn't recognize the number, didn't recognize the location, but the numbers looked right. So I decided to call upon the property, ran the numbers, and here's a teaching point. I say I like to make good money off of bad numbers. Good money off of bad numbers. What does that mean? That means I don't spend my time looking at things and making my business decisions. I just do the numbers, and then once it makes sense on paper, then I will go and look to do that other investigation. So that's when I'll do my due diligence. And so this property that happened to be over 3 hours away from me in a place I never knew of, after I saw it made sense on paper, I went to see the property. Long story short, I ended up buying this property from the uncle of a famous actor, the Macy family. I can't remember the guy, you kind of bug eyes, William H. Macy. Oh, yeah. That family. I bought this 40-unit apartment complex, and that's what laid the foundation for me to make my first $1 million by 32, and that kind of just put me on the map. So
I love that. I mean, that's just like two huge things with that. So like you're telling about the Pursuit of Happiness story, right? And this is just that idea of being solution focused instead of necessarily, dwelling on these moments or dwelling on this. But that's a great example illustrating like we're focusing on the solution, we're focusing on what do you do and how do you do it, right? It's like, how do we get that outcome that we seek? And, you're very familiar with this industry of just, how to maximize the personal development within you, how to maximize your potential. And I love that example. I love that movie. I love that story. And then you go into talking about the real estate, and it's about taking the action. And I tell people all the time in real estate, it's just like, sometimes it's about finding a good deal is better than a great deal, because the good deal you can just take the action on and it'll still make money. And the great deal, you'll be looking all over for the great deal. You'll sit there all the time with your hands up in the air. So like, I just Gosh, I love that story. Keep going. This is pumping me up. So,
Well, I appreciate that. And the reality is what you described just now, the way I communicated in Life is Rich, How to Create Lasting Wealth is how to think versus what to think. And so as I made that purchase of those 3 properties in that very short window of time, I still transitioned into a career, a regular job. At that time, I was a senior systems analyst for the Missile Defense Agency. But here's what was happening. I was uneasy in that job. I was uneasy because I was unfulfilled. It was a phenomenal job, but I was in a cubicle. And so what did I do? I didn't leave the job. No, I still utilized that time, but I had to engage myself. And so what did I do? I went to grad school. I went and got my MBA. Extra time, so I went on ahead and did that. I continued to do my business stuff. And so I went back to school again and got financial planning from Georgetown because I was just bored. I was unfulfilled. But then one day I found myself in a situation that I was getting cold called by people in the financial world and wanting to manage my resources. They didn't know, though, as they were making their cold calls, that I had my MBA from George Washington, that I did financial planning at Georgetown, that I was actually looking for an advisor. And I was looking for an advisor because I knew, as a result of my time in the military, that delegating and supervising and leading people that were smart, that were doing what they knew how to do, was great. That's what leadership is truly about. And so I had this idea of that I needed a team around me. I needed people that were specializing in their field. So I wanted a financial advisor. It wasn't because I didn't know what to do. I didn't want my emotions driving my decisions. And so that right there was what propelled me into my career change, because I was getting these cold calls. I didn't like the responses I was getting from them. And I thought in my mind, I wonder if these are just salespeople. And so around that same time, I was about to have my daughter, Nadia. That was in 2004. I ran my numbers. And that's when I discovered that I was financially free. Now, what does that mean? If you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you've seen the game Cash Flow 101, you know about getting out of the rat race. It's simply when you have your cash flow, your passive income, over and above what your expenses are. And when you have enough passive income coming in and flowing through, and you have that excess cash flow, well, that's when you're financially free. Well, I found myself in that situation at 32 and decided to leave a phenomenal job where I was a senior systems analyst, but I was in a cubicle. I was bored. I was unfulfilled. I wasn't satisfied. And I said my whole time working the way I was working, that the reason I wanted to create wealth and wanted to make that a part of my lifestyle is that I wanted to be that dad that was around. I wanted to be available. I wanted to have the freedom. It wasn't that I was going to veg out. It was that I needed to have the option to be there whenever someone wanted me to be there. And this focus was on my kids. And so I picked up and moved to Jacksonville, Florida, sight unseen, because I'm from Savannah area, 2 hours away. I moved here sight unseen, wanted to be near the water. I was able to do that. And I went into the financial services as a financial advisor, sight unseen, walked into that particular business. And within a week of being in the industry, I realized my background and experiences didn't matter. The reason it didn't matter because my job wasn't making money. I realized real quick that the guys that were in the business weren't guys that made money. They were guys that were good at getting people to say that they were a good guy. So I realized that the business of financial advising that I recognized at a major firm was that I need to have enough people saying he's a great guy so that they can in turn be willing to trust me, to trust the company that I was with, to take their resources and put it into their firm, i.e. assets under management. And then my job was to go out and get more. Well, what made me unique in that business was that I made my first million by 32. I also had academic background. I had professional background. I had practical knowledge. But that wasn't what, and I was a good guy. And that wasn't my business. And so I said, wow, consumers don't know that. If I didn't know that was the job, then consumers don't know that. And so everybody's watching these TV commercials and thinking about these guys that have titles as financial advisors. They don't know that the real deal is their job isn't to make money. Their job was to gather assets, drop it into the market, and then hope that something was going to happen. So great people in the business, but you got to know who you're hiring and what the purpose is so that then you could use them the way that they need to be used and put them in the right position so that they're not overstating what they're able to do and you're not blaming the market of their decision making or their recommendations on why you didn't achieve your particular goals. And so that's what brings me to where I'm at today, where in 2014, I wrote the book, Life is Rich, How to Create Lasting Wealth, as a principle-centered, biblically based leadership program focused on personal growth and entrepreneurship, specifically written to address the fact that 77 million baby boomers are retiring and facing a cash flow danger, that 66 out of 100 people age 65 earn less than $30,000 in retirement, that the average 401k at age 65 is only $96,000, that 34% have nothing put away, and that 58% of people have never run their numbers. And so I wrote Life is Rich, How to Create Lasting Wealth, to have you run your numbers, a simple 7-question analysis, so you can see really what it is that you need to retire comfortably, so that then you can decide what strategy do you need to implement, where I teach a three-strategy approach to creating lasting wealth. That's it.
That's an awesome story. Like there's gosh, there's so much here we can do. And so the question is, my first question, right? And this, I have two questions right off the bat. The first one, a lot of people, you're talking to a lot of people that are in this situation, right? So they graduate from college, they're in their mid-20s, they got the job their parents want, or they got a job, right? And they're finally in this point where they're starting to make money. But they're just like you said, they're unfulfilled. Like there's something more within them. There's more value there, but they might not be in a financial position to just up and leave, or they're scared, or there's some kind of fear. I mean, talk to that person. How do you get into the position where they can jump? How do they get in the position where they can take the big leap? Like, what do they need to do? Like, let me hear.
Absolutely. The first thing is you don't have to jump. The first thing is you need to grow where you're at.
I like that.
And the most important thing for you to realize that I speak throughout Life is Rich is that you are the asset. You are the asset. If your company is willing to send you to school so that you can in turn, or to send you to training so that you can in turn increase the value that you have to bring. See, if they're going to pay for you to do anything, they're doing it as a result of them seeing you as having the ability to learn, and then your ability to then apply what it is that you learn so that you can impact their bottom line.
Absolutely.
Don't get it twisted. So if that's the case, you got to view yourself with that. Sadly, what happens is employees are in their jobs but don't know their value. And so that's why you have people acting out of desperation and almost acting with their hand out, holding out, asking for someone to give, without standing boldly in those offices and literally recognizing, hey, here's what I'm able to give in value. Be a person of value and positive influence in whatever role you're in, so that then in turn, you can attract the value that you need to do whatever else you want to do. The other thing I'll tell you is that you have to, you got to continuously look at your income, your earned income as seed. Your earned income as seed. Stop saying you don't have enough. No, start where you're at. If you don't treat it as seed, well, then you will never have enough. What do you do with seed? That means you got to develop some behavior that will allow you to turn that seed into more, so that in turn is growing, because otherwise you'll never change your situation. There'll never be enough time. There'll never have enough money to change up things.
Yeah.
So
that's absolutely right? We always talk about money is a tool to make more money, right? It's just money's a tool. That's all it is. It's just, it should be there, like you're saying. It's a seed. Plant those seeds, plant those different things. But I like what you said too. It's like, it's not necessarily about jumping necessarily, but it's about improving yourself and growing yourself. Greats along this line, like Jim Rohn, right? He talks about this all the time. You invest into your job, you'll make a living. You invest into yourself, you'll make a fortune. And I think that's, the same principles is, as you increase your level of value, if you get better at things, you'll eventually attract more money because you'll become more valuable. I love that. I love that piece that you added in there. That was brilliant. So it's authentic, Aaron. It's authentic because, as I told you, that my life changed in 1996, the week I graduated from West Point. So you do the calculation how many years it's been that I've been in this realm of improvement. Kaizen, Kaizen, continuous improvement. That's a Japanese term, continuous improvement. That's my lifestyle. And so the sooner you get exposed to that as a behavior, the better your life becomes.
So my big thing is creating a $10 million endowment fund to foster personal growth and entrepreneurship, specifically to getting people to expose to this sooner than later, to say, hey, listen, the questions I ask you people, do you want a job? Do you want a career? Or do you want a life? Do you want a job? Do you want a career? Or do you want a life? And then based upon what you tell me, that's going to determine what I recommend to you. And I'm a parent of 2 kids. My daughter's 13, my son is 12. Their father is a graduate from West Point, George Washington, and Georgetown. Yet I'm not raising them to go to college. What I'm raising them and how I have in my mind to do with them is to ask those questions so that I can then direct them based upon what they tell me they want as their end state. You got to begin with the end in mind. And Stephen Covey says, see, that's one of those another central things is that begin with the end in mind. Regardless of what you're doing, tell me what outcome you're desiring. It's like you're doing these podcasts. What is your desired end state for those viewers and listeners from this will then determine what we give to them each and every time. And that's every area of your life.
That's brilliant. That's everybody talks about that, right? It's about identifying the outcome. I do that with my clients. One of the first things, they'll start spinning. It's like, what is your outcome? I mean, Tony Robbins talks about this. The first thing you identify is the outcome. And then you start to decide, is it your state, your strategy, or your story that's wrong to get to that outcome? What do we need to change and how do we build it? So your questions are great. I mean, when people say that they just need a job, I mean, so you talk about people think they're just reacting to these circumstances when really they're an architect. They're an architect of their life. They can design whatever they need to. People think that they need a job. I mean, is that always the case? Like, what do you think? Like, if I told you right now, like, I just need a job, Nate, like, I just need a job, what would you tell me back? What would be the first thing you'd say?
Then I say, get a job. I mean, really, I say, go get a job. Well, and the only reason, and I said that matter of fact, because I'll say, well, I don't know what you mean by that. And I'll shock you by saying that first. Yeah. But inevitably, what I'm going to come back to is, tell me what a job means to you. Yes. Because that is true. People always say that they need a job. And I'm like, well, what's a job to you? See, many people will shy away from, if you say that you need a job, if that really means that you need money, well, then go social services and just get money, because the truth of the matter is it's already shown on a daily basis that you don't really have to work. We don't work because we have to work. We don't work because we need money to have shelter or food or all that. Because bottom line is, people show all the time that they've got shelter if they're staying underneath the bridge. They've got food if somebody's giving it to them. Those bases are covered. The reason why we work is because we want more. We want better. We want more than what can be just given. So if that's truly the case, then the next thing is you got to look at the ways in which you make money, because if that's the end goal that you want, then I'm going to tell you, then show someone that you're willing to put skin in the game, and then in turn, they will pay you for your performance. Now, most people won't do that because they're looking at a job as someone giving them a guarantee. Someone is saying, here.
Right.
But see, the reality is the opportunity is really what you should be asking for. I want an opportunity. If I brought this to, yesterday was a celebration of it was not a celebration, but the commemoration, the remembrance of the death of Dr. Martin Luther King and his assassination. Mm-hmm. When they think about that and thinking about truly what the history of African Americans has been, what me as a black man is, it always is, I just want the opportunity. I want to know that I have the opportunity to truly pursue this thing called the American dream.
Yep.
And in every situation, the question is not whether or not there are opportunities available, it's whether or not you're willing to actually pursue and accept the opportunities that are before you. And sadly, what happens is we got this entitlement mindset. We got this country where people want and expect a handout. And I'm saying, as a person that has employed people, I don't owe you a job. What I will do is, you're my resource. And the sad thing is, I pay you to do an exchange. I'm going to pay you commensurate with value you're giving me. Now, if you're going to show me that you're going to increase the revenue so I can pay you more, then I'm all for it. Lock arms with me. But that's not the mindset of most people. So when I talk to that person that said, I just need a job, I just want a job, whatever, I'm looking at them like, I can't do nothing for you, because the bottom line is you say that, but you're not willing to do the work.
Right. It's about changing the mindset, right? It's about setting the goals, increasing the standard, and finding out the why in people. Right. It's like, what is the why? Like you're saying, like, well, what's a job going to get you? Well, a job's going to get me money. Well, then go make money. that if that's what you want, like, or do you want something like fulfilling, or do you want to make a difference, or are you doing, what is it, or is work of value? So I see that all the time, right? People think that, yeah, I'm going to work really, really hard. I'm going to like work hard. And it's like, well, why did working as hard as you can become so valuable? Well, because we were assuming that work equals money back, right? And we both know that to be false, because there's a lot of different ways you can work smarter. You can create passive streams of income and stuff like that.
Yeah. And Aaron, let me share something though, and I want to be clear about this idea of doing what you have at hand in order to meet those immediate needs. See, once again,
yeah,
if that's truly the case, do that. Because again, money is seed. So that means if you need to take a job to do something that you think is less than what you're worth, do that so that you can get your seed and you can buy your time. Now, here's the problem you run into, because I faced unemployment after the market crash. So I tell the story about making my first $1 million, but I also talk about what happened after we were in Inc. 500's fastest growing company. And that's in chapter 3 when I talk about being nearly homeless and bankrupt. Well, what happened? Well, I got caught up in that same storm, and I saw a portfolio of over 5 million go down to zero. And how did it happen? Well, because of what was going on in the market, not because of just the properties, but just overall. The lenders weren't willing to make any shifts. I mean, I was saying to bankers, hey, I'm a business partner with you. I've done these things so that you guys can get a return on your money. I knew that I was in business in partnership. But the person on the phone wasn't decision makers. They were people that were employees. They weren't having that conversation in the same way. And so from that standpoint, people that had always been taking care of that relationship were the last ones to actually get assistance from the vantage point of, they said, well, that person will always pay their bills. They will always do the right thing. So it was literally a season of time where if you didn't have any blemishes against your record, you weren't going to get any attention. You weren't getting anything reduced or eliminated or structured the right way. And so to that end, what I learned in going through that downside was that I had to make some adjustments in order to continue to survive. But this asset was never lost.
Yeah.
And so that's really where the power comes in, is that you got to first realize that you're the asset, and then you got to make smart decisions based upon what your circumstances. Don't be this guy that's sitting around saying you want a job, or need something, and holding on to a dream without trying to meet your needs that you've got to get met. Do what you need to do so that you can do. I got a buddy right now who's made tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's driving Uber. Why is he doing that? Because he needs to still have the flexibility to continue to work on what he's made his money on in the past, but he's working 12-hour days driving because it gives him the flexibility so he can still do those other things. So what I'm saying is, man, get pride and ego out of the way. And once you do that, you start thinking about what other people think and worrying about what other people think about you and your title, because truth of the matter is they ain't paying your bills. So do what you got to get done. So I just want to make sure people don't get those things as if they're diabolically opposed, because that's not the case. I'm not the guy that says, hey, you got to be an entrepreneur or you need to be a job. I'm like, you need to make sure that you know what life you want to create, and then clearly understand that certain paths will never get you what you say you really want. So you got to take some risks. You got to step out of your comfort zone and do something that's different than the beaten path, because 97% of people are unable to retire comfortably.
Well, I love that too. And it's because so especially in this community of, I would say my generation, the millennials, right? Entrepreneurship is put up on this pedestal. And, I'm an entrepreneur and I make a ton of money as an entrepreneur, but I also work a job, and I work a very professional engineering management job. And it's almost like there's this oh, you're not really an entrepreneur then because you never jumped out of your job. It's like, well, no, those are, like you're saying, money is seed. Like there's a ton of money in both of these. And this is so passive that I can just keep making money over here, and it's fun, and I enjoy the leadership aspect of it, and it's challenging problems. And it's I love that example that you kind of bring out. It's money is seed. Just pull in as many streams of income as you can. And it's who really cares if you're this entrepreneur that you just hit it big in Silicon Valley or whatever, but there's lots of good small business owners that are dominating, but because they've created a passive system, they can also do other things with their time. So I just love that example that you bring up. And I mean, you're also a guy, I know, you speak about how time is so valuable to you because it allows the freedom, right? So I try to teach people that there's ways you can make money without investing a ton of your time per se. Mr. Nate Scott, right? From Nate Scott, what do you say to time, money, the value, the energy, the trifecta we call the resources of life, how you use them?
Well, I like to, and you'll watch videos, and I oftentimes say we all have the same 1,440 minutes per day. And when you subtract out the time for working, for sleeping, for commuting, and the time it takes you to do what you have to do each and every day of your life, most people are left with just 1 to 2 hours remaining to do what they really want to do. But then the question is, do they have the money to do it? Mm-hmm. And so with that understanding, the key is realizing what you want to do with that earned income, which is what I call seed. You got to learn to take your earned income, convert that to residual income, and then convert that to passive income. Most people have never been exposed to the idea of residual income. And so when I do my coaching and consulting and I talk to people that are business owners, I ask the question, are you a business owner or are you self-employed? Are you a business owner or are you self-employed? And most people look at me like, what do you mean? Well, no, I work for myself. I said, okay, well, the way you want to kind of evaluate it is, can you go away for 6 months to a year and come back having your business being stronger than when you left? Do you have systems in place? See, one of the reasons why I tell people that have a job, that's the best time for you to start a business, is because you don't have the time to put all that into it.
Gosh, I can really
you now are forced to create systems. You're now able to hire someone to make sure that they can do that stuff. So that if you decide to leave your job, you don't walk yourself into a job, because that's the story of most people. They start their quote unquote business, but it's dependent upon them. So they don't really have an asset. That's something that's actually creating income for them. No, really, they just have a job. And so they have to leave it in order to continue to go. So what I say, what does one need to do passively or residually? As I said, in 1996, when I got introduced to personal growth and development and entrepreneurship, that was via the industry of network marketing. Mm-hmm. Now, for me, I was first time exposed to it, and I've never been drawn into that space because I was wowed by the money, the stories of the money. For me, I never knew about picking up books and going to seminars and being around successful people. So the environment, which was a growth environment, that's where I turned who I already was into something of greater value, because I realized there were other resources that I was never exposed to, that I could go study successful people, that I can listen to a podcast, that I can go have lunch and get a mentor, that I can get direct access to people that could specialize in specifically what I was interested in. So that's the first thing, is realizing that you're the asset. You want to study to grow to what you want to become, and then realize that there are opportunities to get involved with income opportunities that can allow you to create passive income, a residual income. Residual means you do something one time, and then you have the ability to get paid on that repeatedly from that one time. My first experience truly with residual income was my 40-unit apartment complex. I did something one time, i.e. put a tenant in a unit, and then that unit, which had a lease agreement, allowed me to get paid 12 months. That's residual income. I did one thing, got them leased, and they turned. Imagine I did that 40 times. So now I've got these 40 different people paying something on a monthly basis without me having to go and do anything extra. That was residual income. Well, I realized that's not something that everyone can do, especially not from the front side. There's a lot more risk. There's more decision making that comes in. A lot more you got to really be able to handle. But with the network marketing space, I mean, I can show a person how to get started in a home-based business for $19 a year, and then put them in a situation where they can learn these skills so they can then learn the 4 steps that I say you need in order to create lasting wealth. And so those 4 steps are: step number 1, you got to learn how to sell. You got to learn how to sell. Now, sales to most people looks like trying to get people to do stuff.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that sales is really about your listening and then your ability to serve. You listen so that you can serve. How may I serve you? It's more about finding out what it is that people have going on, knowing already what you have to offer of value. And then you have this big old net of people, that's called networking, And then everyone in your network is not a prospect. But if you listen enough and you ask the questions, you can find out that who's in your network is a true prospect. And you can't talk to everyone. You just got to be clear about what your message is. That's the first thing, is you learn how to sell. The second step is you got to become an entrepreneur. You got to become an entrepreneur. What does that mean? An entrepreneur is simply a problem solver, man. Be a problem solver. Yes. A problem solver is not someone that complains. A problem solver is the one that's seeing things while everybody else is complaining. The problem solver is trying to say, well, okay, how can I change that? Or what outcome do I really want? Or what outcome do we really want? What can I do to help that come about? That's what entrepreneurship is about. Entrepreneurs get paid for solving problems. If you want to make more money, start solving more problems. Your bank account is going to be directly correlated to the number of problems and the size of the problems that you're able to solve. Yes. Number of problems and the size of the problems. That's the second step. The third step is you got to choose the right industry. And that has more variability. That's where you can start looking at where the trends, where the things that you want to get involved in.
What do you like? Things like that, right?
That's right. That's the third industry. And then that's the third step. And then the fourth step is choose the right vehicle. And once again, choose that vehicle that you're passionate about. Choose that vehicle that has enough money available. Choose that vehicle where you got enough talent and skill for you to get involved in, because this whole idea of just following what you're passionate about, yes. I'm going to tell you, like Gary Vee said, that's a lie. That's kind of false. The reason why I say that, that's right. The reason I say that's sometimes a problem, because you can be passionate about something, but passion fades. Passion wings. If you think about it in the context of relationships and marriage, I posted the other day, I say, marry for purpose, not for passion. Marry for purpose, not for passion. You've got to have something anchored, because one day you might be passionate about something and the next day you're passionate about something else. But if you can understand your why and understand why it is that you're doing what you're doing, then you're going to invest the time to study that what you're doing. Then you're going to start having success in what you're doing. And then when you're having success, you're never going to leave it. See, we don't leave the things that we're good at. Gosh. We don't stop doing the things we're good at.
I love that. I love that. And I talk about this with my clients, right? It's about not only identifying what you're passionate about, what you really like, what you really enjoy, right? Like you said, passion fades. A great point. But also identifying your strengths and identifying where you can provide value. So you talk about service, what the world needs. What do people really, or what are they asking for? And how do you serve that purpose? I mean, this is, you're talking exactly the same language here. It's about getting the idea of, like, when you're talking about sales, right? People think it's these like witty weapons of influence. It's just all it is mastering cognitive biases. It's like, no, it's identifying what problem does somebody have and where's my solution in my inventory of ideas or products or whatever this is, right? And how do I bridge that connection? And that's my job as the salesman or salesperson, right? Gosh, this is so great. I just love the energy. I love the ability you have to communicate these things to people with different tools, different weapons and stuff like that. This is awesome.
So Aaron, what you're talking about though is what you hit is literally all I'm doing is pulling in from my toolkit.
Right.
That's why when people start to say, well, what do you do, Nate? I'm like, well, I've graduated from what I do probably about over 10 years ago. It's not really what I do, it's who I be. Well, what do you mean? Well, I wrote this personal mission statement of to live each day principle-centered based on biblical teachings and to be a person of value and positive influence. So the only way that I can be a person of value and positive influence is that I have to have awareness of what value is not determined by me. You determine value. You guys will determine whether or not this is of value or not. It's not me. You see? So that right there is something that you said, that all you got to do is now spend a lifetime of continuing to add to your tool bag and then use the appropriate weapon based upon the circumstance.
Yes. God, you're building the inventory, you're building the tool set by improving yourself, by finding these different weapons, by becoming a better problem solver, by understanding the industries, the techniques, the people, and being able to recognize, like, I can help them this way. I love this. I love this. And I like also what you said. It's about who you're becoming, right? It's not necessarily about the actions of arriving. People always think, when you make money or you do these different things, it's about arriving at this moment, when really it's about who you're becoming in this moment and who you are acting as, and are you acting as that version of yourself that you describe in your personal mission statement. I describe this as the ideal self. It's about the person that you want to become. I love this. I love this so much.
Yeah. It's about authentic living, man. It's about authentic living. And that's where the power of of Life is Rich really comes to real time is because Life is Rich is 100% focused on helping believers to believe. Life is rich, living in fullness every day because I realize I'm Christ's heir. I don't beat people over the head with the Bible. I just tell people my story. And the fact is that my story truly begins at 19 when I walked the perimeter during Desert Storm. And I said, Lord, if you allow me to make it back, I'll never waste a day of my life. So there was a vow that was given. And so to that end, it's always in the forefront of my mind so that everything I do, it has to be the foundation. Every relationship, every engagement, every project has to be based upon the right foundation. And so one of my catchphrases is alignment before assignment. Alignment before assignment. So I'm not changing masks. I'm not in this thing where I'm one way here and then I'm another way here. Today I talked to a business owner and the business owner was telling me about his struggle of being a person of faith, but then and then trying to figure out how to do business. I'm saying there should be one and the same. You don't, there's the same thing. Yeah. It's about service. And so to that end, you're not to be the lesser in the relationship. This idea of thinking that Christians are punks, that's a lie. No, we're not punks. We're strong. So that means we're going to stand on the side of right. We're going to call stuff for what it is. We're not passive. We're bold. We're going to hold you to a higher standard because standards are meant to be reached up to versus reached down to. And then as a leader develops, you got to continue to lead people. So we're the messengers of hope, not false hope, not this rah-rah fluff that most people experience, but literally hope based upon a belief. And so so my message is one of saying the promises of Matthew 6:33 inspires me spiritually, mentally, emotionally, relationally, physically, and financially. It inspires me to fulfill the promise that's written. It inspires me to fulfill the promises that are given as a result of the sacrifice of the life of Christ, because I know that his death was meant for me to have life, but not just have life, but have it more abundantly. So Therefore, I've got to continue to live at the highest level, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, relationally, physically, and financially, so that I can attract others to me so that they can then get the representation of what I know to be true through his word. And it's seasons. It's not always highs. It's just knowing always that there is nothing that's too great for me to achieve because I serve the highest one. And so it's another thing. That's where the faith walks comes in. Faith is where the word says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. But it's faith that happens because I have an expectation. That's what hope is. It's an expectation. And because I hope for more, then I can know that it's real, even though I may not see it with my natural eye, but in the mind's eye, it's there. So that's where your thoughts lead to your feelings, which lead to your actions, which lead to results. And that's what I mean by the believer has to believe. And so that's the message. That's what I really put forth. And all those other things that come about it with my services that I offer, my products, the companies I endorse, the people I endorse, is only for me showing people a solution to bring and to manifest that which they say they believe in.
Gosh, I love this. We're going to church today. This is good. So I'm getting motivated. I mean, so I'm a man of faith as well. So this touches me, as well spiritually. And I think, people always find this challenge because, there's certain views of Christianity. There's certain verses that don't sit well with people. There's certain opinions of Christians that make them seem like you have this weird new age thing going on right now, right? Like very spiritually driven people that they believe in kind of downloading things from the subconscious or whatnot, which I think is still consistent with Christian values. I still think there's parts of that are consistent. And not to get into like a total religious conversation, but you do hear about people talking like it's easier for a king right, than a rich man to get into heaven. I mean, what does Nate Scott say to that?
Well, again, it goes to the foundation of life is rich, which is Matthew 6:33, which says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness, and then all things thereafter shall be added unto you." What you're describing is where people take things out of context and make it the idea of this traveler that has all this stuff they're traveling with and trying to get through the needle, which is a passageway, and get through it, how it's being unable to do so because you got all this other stuff trying to get through this narrow place. Once again, people Oftentimes we'll use pieces and then not have the context and the understanding. That's what clouds the relationships. That's why I've created this new group called Koinonia, which is fellowship. That's focused with 3 resources to meant to bring people together. One resource is a prayer diary, daily journal, daily planner, which is about intentional living in your time. The other is the Maxwell Leadership Bible, which is for the foundation for us to have that same source to go straight to and then walk through together. And then the third is Life is Rich, How to Create Lasting Wealth, which is a principle-centered, biblically based leadership program focused on personal growth and entrepreneurship. So with these resources, I'm saying if we are in agreement that Christ died, according to Matthew 28, 1-6, and if we're in agreement in accordance to Matthew 6:33, it says there is a promise that comes after us first seeking Christ first and foremost, then let's not have all these other distractions. Because the problem is you got different sects and people trying to translate and then make it out of context. The body generally doesn't have understanding, and that's where the gap is. And that's why we see broken, busted, disgusted Christians that aren't even believing in what the word says, knowing that life is already in our hands. We already have everything to us, but we're not doing the work. We got to get to work. We got to get to study. That's why Life is Rich is written with every chapter beginning with scripture. And then I say, so what? You know the word, but so what? And then I go into leadership is the answer, the cash flow danger. It happened to me. Become an entrepreneur, choosing the right entity, raising capital, asset protection, protecting your financial privacy, reducing your taxes, retirement planning, residual income retirement planning, estate planning, and then Life is Rich. So it's me saying, okay, enough of this talking about, well, God will this. No, he will. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a tool that you can read and get your word in, but now you need to get off your butt and go to work.
I love it. I love it. I love this. I love this conversation so much. And just shifting gears a little bit here, you know, we talk about this abundance that we have around us, right? We talk about the resourcefulness that we can, you know, the resourcefulness we can be, if that is a thing, right? You can be resourceful and you can find these opportunities all around us, right? So like, I like to ask this question, especially to financial guys. And it's that if your bank account goes to zero, you got to start over. You've invested in what you talk about, the biggest asset, which is your knowledge yourself. You have become valuable. How does Mr. Nate Scott, how do you go and start with nothing if you had to just go off onto the road tomorrow? I mean, what would you start to do? What would be your solution?
But given that I've already, and I deal with this with baby boomers or people that have been displaced that are older, because oftentimes that's where they're running into problems with trying to make a transition, because the employment, there's no shortage of supply of talent. And so the thing that everyone has an opportunity to convert into revenue is their relationship. See, if you spend your energy in looking at and making a list of everyone that you know, well, then your only focus in converting nothing into something is is giving value. See, value is what's translated into money. We can take away money, but with value, you can have anything that you want. See, I don't need money in order to get shelter. What I need is to be able to offer something to the person that has the shelter. What can I offer? If a person has shelter and they need that place painted, and I'm willing to give value because I know how to paint, well, then that gives me an opportunity to get that shelter, because I can work out something as an agreement to get that. See, it's always about the problem solving, but beginning with how can I serve? How can I give value? A low-hanging fruit to that regard is anything in the sales arena. See, every company is trying to increase their revenue. So if you're willing to be that mouthpiece, because you got this book of business, i.e. your contact list, your phone, your relationships, whatever, if you can say that's your asset, and you know that what you have, every business wants the opportunity to give their goods or services to those people. So you don't have to come and create no new product. You don't have to be a product developer. That's the hard route. You don't need to go write a book. You can go find books to sell to other people. You can go find an affiliate link to sell to people. See, the thing is, this stuff has gotten so clear for me because I've owned a franchise before. I've done the real estate piece, and I've done that at the high level. I speak for money, network marketing. personal training. So again, what I'm saying is, out of all the different things that I've done, that I have access to, that I know not, that I have knowledge of, that I know to do, I'm saying that there's nothing smarter for a person to do than to embrace the ideas of sales. So if I had absolutely nothing, I would find something that I could offer up a value to a market. And what I'm teaching people to do is, for $19 a year, I can get someone started in a relationship with me so that I can teach them how to develop the skill set that will then make them valuable in any space or time. Because you've got to be in a situation where you're learning, how to present yourself. You got to learn how to share. You got to learn how to listen. You got to hold those things. So Aaron, put yourself in a situation with no money, but having the right attitude. Oh, this is another exercise I take people through. Here's the deal. I tell you to draw a triangle on your sheet of paper, put K for knowledge, put S for skill, put A for attitude. KSA. And then what I want you to do is, I want you to write down 5 successful people that you deem to be successful. And you write down these 5 people. In fact, give me 5 names. Give me 5 names real quick. Successful people in the realm that other people would know or consider to look at.
Sure. Let's go with some of these self-developers, right? Tony Robbins. Let's go.
Tony Robbins.
Tim Ferriss. Let's go Grant Cardone. Let's go Gary Vee. And who's another good one? Let's get another one in that same arena.
Russell Brunson.
Yeah, let's do Russell Brunson. I like him.
Okay. All right. So anyway, so those are, now I'll tell you that most people will never say those because they don't really know those, because we're in a space that's kind of unique. Yeah. Most people will say stuff like Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Kim Kardashian, LeBron James. I mean, even people laugh at her. But here's a lesson with Kim Kardashian, for example. Why is she valuable? She's valuable because she has eyeballs. She's valuable because she has a market. People will follow her. So what does that do? That translates into money. Why? Because she can now take her book of business and she can take it to that person that has these products or offerings, and she can say, I can bring you these eyeballs. That's the key. So people oftentimes will kind of mock her, but that's really what I'm saying right now, is that you have the same ability to do the exact same thing. So now what we do is, those names that you mentioned, we say, okay, let's give traits, and let's make a list of 10 of traits that these people that you think they have. Many times when people will say, well, they're hardworking. Someone will say, well, they're smart. And then we'll go down this list, right? Once you have that, then all I do is say, okay, now tell me, is this a K, is this an S, or is this an A? Hard work. Is that a K? Is that an S, or is that an A? Is that a knowledge? Is that a skill or attitude?
For hard work?
Yeah.
I think you could argue between a skill or an attitude.
Okay. I will tell you that indispensably, being a hard worker is 100% about your attitude. Because with that attitude, that's going to determine whether or not you're willing to actually go to work. You can always learn the skill, and the skill is going to be driven whether or not you have the attitude to learn. So when you go down that exercise, and I challenge you just to do it, what you'll find, and what I find when I'm doing these live events, is that people will end up finding out that no matter what it is that they want, all the excuses that they've made, that it all boils down to the attitude. If you start with the right attitude, there's nothing that you can't learn to do. There's nothing that you can't accomplish. There's nothing that you can't bounce back from. It's all back to the attitude.
I love that. I love that so much, because one of the ways we first got connected was through Facebook on the Westpoint networking group, right? And I teach a lot of my clients perpetual optimism, right? Because if you're optimistic in any situation, there can't be a bad situation, because you're always thinking of the best out of the situation, right? So I teach this with my clients, and it was just funny. What people were, they're bashing multi-level marketing because whenever it's got controversy in the world. And I was just saying, my wife has done multi-level marketing, has done quite well. And that's when you jumped on, you're like, yeah, it's just amazing. The cynical attitude you see with some of these people in these internet trolls and all this stuff. And that's where we originally got connected. And it was just funny because we both had that mutual belief that, yes, optimism, like, your attitude can make any situation work if you believe it and you convert your mind to that style of thinking. So
yeah. Also, Aaron, the other thing I really was highlighting was that don't express an opinion when someone is asking a question where you're not equipped to answer it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what the issue that I had, is that you had all these negative comments. The guy asked the question of, is there anyone that has been able to or has experience with generating an income that was their primary income? That's a yes or no question that's only suitable for people that have done it. It's not a question for you to express your appearance of you not doing it. You didn't do it. That's not what he asked. He asked the question, have you done this? Because he wanted to go and get validation that it could be done. The belief had to be based upon, was this actually something that people actually could do? It's not. I don't need you to tell me about you flunking out of West Point. I didn't know, did anyone graduate from West Point?
You're right.
I don't need you to you know what I'm saying? Don't give me all the people that tell me about your failure because you didn't do it. You didn't do it. But I need to know that somebody did do it, because that then lets me know it's possible. Because if someone did do it one time, then it means it's possible. That's where the heartburn I have, is that people would lend their knowledge per se that wasn't based upon any knowledge. They didn't have they didn't never do it themselves. They didn't have an experience. They didn't never try it. They didn't actually go to a meeting. They didn't have to do any investigation. All they were going off was telling someone about what they couldn't do, or creating this image as if something was wrong with that, as opposed to saying, wait a minute, I just didn't have the courage to follow through.
Well, that's an allegory for like a whole group of people that think like that, right?
Yes.
I mean, look at the system, right? Like, life is rich, right? You believe fundamentally that there's abundance around us. There is so many people out there that just challenge the belief that making money is even feasible, right?
Yes.
And they just, any idea you have, bad idea. Well, like, one of my favorites, right, is like, you get an invention idea or a business idea or whatever. Oh, someone's already done that. So does that mean you can't make money doing it? You know, so someone's already done that, so I'm just going to crumple up, throw it out. It's like, somebody's already done, life coaching. Somebody's already done consulting. Somebody's already done financial planning. Somebody's already written books. That doesn't mean that you can't do it with your own flavor and create a market edge for it, right? I mean, it's just, and I think that what we found out on that forum was just this allegory for a negative opinion, this negativity that people create around the ability to have abundance, right?
Right. It's a mindset. It's literally one where, and I said it's sad, because that's supposed to be a group of the leaders of the world. That's supposed to be the best of the best. But all we find is that
1% of the 1% is what they tell us, right?
Yeah. But the reality is that it's just still the same microcosm of the regular world, and it's still one of those things where people don't want to be left behind. And so what you have this crabbing idea where people are trying to hold people back by killing their dreams and their hopes. And what happens is you get bashing from amongst people, because again, that's the way it happens, is that you're going to get that resistance, because every time someone succeeds from amongst that same group doing the same thing that someone else is not willing to do, it makes someone look at themselves and say, wait a minute, what's wrong with me?
Absolutely.
And the reality is, it's not wrong with you. You just don't want to step off into the world. You don't want to step off the cliff. You don't want to do something out of the box. You want security versus life. You don't want to have all that's promised to you. You want the handout, and you got this entitlement mindset. And that's the issue in a time where we need leadership. So we got to, and we don't have hope that's in there. So the crazy thing is, we got to start really communicating the message of hope, communicating this message, because it's a season that we need to have it out there, and we're equipped to do it. Leaders got to stand up. Leaders got to stand up.
Leaders got to stand up, and they got to show people that, yeah, you're the trailblazer, right? Like, you, Nate Scott, you're the trailblazer right now, showing people what is possible, what we can do in this world, right? And I just love that about you, and that's why, that's what attracted me to you, and that's why you're on this podcast, is because you share that same belief and you share those same values. So we're really running short on time here, and I respect your time, and I wanted to just get a couple final questions just for people. And number one is, if you had any just a piece of advice or a quote or anything you could just really short that you could leave people with, that they'll remember you by, that they'll remember this message, and if they could just write this down, what would it be?
Life is rich.
Boom.
Life is rich, and learn and know what it really means. But when you say it, I want you to be able to say life is rich, understanding that truly you are Christ's heir. So living in fullness every day is a right that you actually have, to live in fullness every day. So that means if you find yourself in a situation where you're not exactly where you want to be, that doesn't mean that's your end state. Your current situation is not a reflection of what your destiny is. Your current situation is not a reflection of what your destiny is. Be
Gosh,
willing to hold on to that end goal, end promise, not even end goal, the end promise that you've been promised life more abundantly.
I love that. And then the second question for you is, you have the book Life is Rich, right? And that's kind of the foundation of your work and the foundation of what you believe and what you value. What other books would you recommend to people to read other than Life is Rich?
Well, I said one of my newest books, that's the old one, is just the Maxwell Leadership Bible. It's a Bible, but it's a Bible that also contains vignettes from John Maxwell's books. And if you don't know who John Maxwell is, he's just a foremost leadership authority.
Yeah. Amazing speaker, coach.
Yeah. So that's another one. The other one I talk about in my book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's an anchor book for me. That's a book that I generally pull out every year and reread. And I've been doing that since '96.
Well, that's actually, I have a good follow-up question for you on that one. What are your habits? What does your daily routine look like? What do you spend time doing? Because a lot of people, it's kind of becoming popular now to identify what is the morning of some of these successful people that have created this space in their mind.
I tell you, honestly, my most critical habit is prayer, reflection, and working out. I say that because I don't control myself by a calendar or a schedule or a to-do list or any of that stuff. I choose, again, seek, and these are some of the 7 habits of highly effective people. First things first, I literally, I will make the time for the thing that I choose to be most important and relevant to what it is I'm working on. Like this here is important to me because of my personal mission, to be a person of value and positive influence. Picking up my kids daily from school, and then I was going to the library, is a part of my daily routine. My wife and I go and work out generally in the mornings times. That's a part of my daily routine. That prayer journal and daily planner and reading and getting that study time, all that sharpening the saw stuff are things that enable me to have clearer thoughts and allow me to real time jump on and do something that's relevant. So it's always about how does this align with my personal mission each and every day, and how am I being a person of value and positive influence?
I love that. I love how you gave that opportunity to people, right? So like you're giving yourself, I should say, the opportunity to seize the moments that matter.
You hit it. That's exactly the point. That's exactly it. Is being able to live in fullness every day. To me, it has to be about service. This is my giving myself away. Nathaniel means God's gift. That's what my name means. My name is God's gift. And each and every day I'm looking to give myself away. And as a result of that, all that other stuff is taken care of. That's the result of the value that I'm able to give away. Because like I said, I give. In no way am I converting all this into business.
Yeah.
But I get enough seeds out there that is being sold, that I'm impacting enough lives, that when someone really finds that they need to do something, they know to somebody they can actually authentically reach out to that's not trying to take from, but I'm always trying to give to you.
I love it. Gosh, I love that. So Nate Scott, where can we find you on social media? Where can we find you on your website? Where can we find you if we want to find, work with you in the future, connect?
The first place to connect with me is asknatescott.com. Asknatescott.com. I definitely recommend that everyone go there as a place to get the book. If you want to get started my goal this year is to reach 25,000 families and showing them how to implement the 3 strategies of creating lasting wealth. Strategy number 1 is a personal financial strategy, which deals with dealing with where you're at right now and helping you to manage your personal finances and really focusing on saving money and putting that emergency fund in place and eliminating debt. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is the tax reduction strategy. All you out there that are W-2 employees, I then work with you as saying you got to file more than just your 1040 EZ or your 1040. You got to file a Schedule C, or you got to file a Schedule E, or you got to file a Schedule A. You got to put some schedules in there if you want to create lasting wealth. And so in that area, that's when I talk to you about low hanging fruit of just starting a home-based business, because that's where you convert ordinary expenses into business deductions. And so that's step 2. And then the step 3 is the investment strategy, which is where once you run your 7-question analysis and see what you really do need to retire comfortably, then that's when you need to look for a place to get a greater rate of return. And we work in 2 different areas, Forex and real estate. So that's where you can move into that 3rd phase. But if you want to engage in that relationship, then I tell you to help me to help other families to learn that we just published a study where cleaning your house just 1 time a week is equivalent to smoking 20 packs of cigarettes, a pack of cigarette each and every day for 20 years. Cleaning your house once a week is like smoking a pack of cigarettes a day for 20 years. That right there leads to that lung cancer, which is 1 in 3 people die from lung cancer. Something else that people don't know. My wife is in a company where she is, they're a big advocate for the fight against eliminating lung cancer in general. I'm on that same track because her mother is a breast cancer survivor. Her father passed away from pancreatic cancer. Those are issues that I'm very concerned about. And as a West Pointer with a lifetime of service to the nation as one of my bedrocks, my goal and my desire is to help people to get informed about these different areas. And so if you're a believer out there, I want to invite you to learn about Koinonia, because that's the place that I've created as a space for believers to connect, and for you and I, Aaron, for us to be able to give the value that we're talking about, for believers to start believing, because that's where I see the number one issue that are facing people that say they believe in God's word, but we shouldn't be struggling the way we're doing. And the reason we aren't, because we're not being educated on how to apply God's word on a practical basis. So life is rich is the tagline. AskNateScott.com is how to reach me. I'm very accessible. If you don't have the book, you can get the signed copy from the website, but otherwise it's available on Amazon to buy the download. But other than that, man, just Google me and look me up.
Love it. Gosh, thank you so much for coming on the show. And once again, guys, if you go to my website, aaronjarmstrong.com, you'll be able to see Nate's profile under podcasts, and it'll have all his information, his contact right there. So I just really appreciate you coming on the show today, Nate. And like, your message is just amazing, and we'll at least be able to hopefully help you spread that mission of touching, 25,000 families, because your words have a lot of meaning, have a lot of value, and they've given me so much value today. And I really hope that they've given the listeners value as well. And what you do is amazing, and what you do just lights a fire within the soul. And I just want to thank you for that. I want to recognize you for your service, that it's well received. It is absolutely well received over here. And once again, guys, you can go to my website, aaronjarmstrong.com, and you'll be able to find all this information on Nate. You'll be able to download the podcast there as well. And you can also find me at Aaron Armstrong 33 on Instagram. So once again, that was Winners Wallets Worldviews, guys. Nate, thanks for coming on the show. And we're going to be out of here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.